Hey guys, I'm Alex.
I'm Sean.
And we're going to be doing a pop review of Dunkirk. So a lot of people really were looking forward to Dunkirk because most people I know are really big Chris Nolan fans.
Yes.
But Chris Nolan has done a lot of sort of fantastical things. You know, he has things like Inception, which are very, heady in the way that they're constructed. Mm-hmm. We have Batman, which isn't necessarily fantastical, but a little bit.
It took a very serious approach with Batman.
Serious approach, yeah, exactly.
A realistic Batman.
And, just sort of these other things that he's, Interstellar as well. Like, he's very good at science. He's very good at sort of breaking these boundaries. And Dunkirk is a real departure from that. So, tell me what you thought about Dunkirk.
I mean, well, first off, we both saw it in 70mm, which if you are going to see Dunkirk, I recommend seeing it in that format.
It looked incredible.
It was great.
Yeah.
The projections even had a problem when they were first playing it that, have to work out the kinks, they're not used to a film projector. But
it's great, though. There's like this sort of tangibility, when you see a film in actual film, projected on film.
I mean, for me, I understand what Dunkirk and what Chris was trying to do with Dunkirk. And when people ask me like, oh, you saw Dunkirk, what do you think? The first thing I tell people is be very, very mindful that this is not a war film. It is not. Be mindful that it is not an action film. It is not. This movie is about Dunkirk. Dunkirk is the main character of this movie. And everything else that happens, all the characters in it aren't, in my opinion, given enough screen time and aren't treated in a sense that we get a good idea of who they are and what their motivations are. We're kind of like thrust into it, and because there's a really, really lack of dialogue, we don't get. I'm not invested in anything that's going on. The characters of the movie.
It's kind
with Dunkirk, I'm invested because I get it. They're trying to escape, and I get that it's wartime. There's going to be parts of the film that need that quiet time, and I get it. But when the majority of the movie is quiet, for me, I mean, this is just me, that the allure of that kind of is lost a little bit when there are moments when you need that quietness to soak in the beauty of it. Because this movie is gorgeous. And it's beautiful to look at. But when the majority of the movie is like that, then it's hard for me to get invested in when anything else is happening.
It's true. All the characters were very cookie cutter for me. All the characters were like, oh, here's your generic scared person at war. And here's your generic pilot who is just doing his job. Here's your generic, civilian who's trying to help. Yeah. And those are all very important jobs. And I wish that I had a little bit more insight. I wish they had developed those characters a little bit more so that I can, relate a little bit more, that I can jump a little bit further into their stories, into their experience. To me, this film was scene after scene after scene of just torture porn for me. It seemed to me that Chris Nolan was just exercising his suspense bone. Just sort of like, hey, I think I need to practice my suspense. Let's just do that for an entire 2 hours. And so every scene was just someone's about to drown. Someone's about to get shot. They're shooting at someone who's about to drown. Like, everything was just so... And, and the ship goes down and the lights are flashing. And look, it's incredible cinema. Like,
absolutely.
The scenes themselves are... The sound. If this film does not win for sound design, I will be mad.
And
it was incredible.
All those boats were real boats that they used. Like,
sure.
And
no, there was a lot to like about this movie.
Yeah. Stylistically,
cinematically speaking, yes, Chris did a great job. But for some reason, for me, the movie as a whole did not come together, and it's something that I'm not going to want to watch again.
I agree. Visually amazing, stylistically amazing, sound design great, and for me it was the approach that I think that's where Chris lost me here. The approach to make Dunkirk the main character of this movie, I think that's where he lost me. And I think I agree with you. Now that I've seen it, I don't know if I want to experience this again, because sitting there for me. When I go to see movies, I'm interested in the story and the characters.
Yeah.
If that works, I am willing to forgive. Oh, that CGI didn't work. Oh, this didn't work. If the story is engaging, I'm in. But if the way he told Dunkirk, which is a great story, at first I was like, oh, we're gonna approach this from land, sea, and air. Okay, I'm in. But the way he approached it, it didn't work for me. So when things happen, like when George died, I know that's supposed to have an effect on me. I know that. I've seen enough movies where I know I'm supposed to care, and I'll be very honest, I didn't.
I love George, though, because I'm going to disagree with you, because I think George was really the only character that we were able to relate to. And
I think we're supposed to, but for me, I didn't.
Oh, for me, I did. Like, he's just this young lad who wants to do good. He's sort of stuck in this, low-wage job. Probably doesn't even get paid for the stuff he does on the dock. He's just sort of like doing whatever, trying to make his way out of there. He's like, I just want to be in the local papers, make my dad proud. Yeah. He jumps, onto the boat, and he's like, where are we going? And they're like, we're going to war, George. And he's like, okay, cool. I could be useful.
I'll be useful.
And I love that. I think George is probably the most relatable character for me, because not all of us have been to war. And, I know some friends who have been in war who have watched this film, and they have very different reactions. So I can't speak for everyone.
I can understand that.
But George is great. And then, it just gets, okay, bye, George.
Yeah, like, oh, he's blind. And then, like, oh, mind George when you go down there. Oh, no, he's dead. Oh.
Yeah, he is. And, here's so films like this, I think he wanted to paint this very accurate picture of war and make it very real and tangible. And he did that in a lot of ways with the sound design and the way it was shot and, these quiet moments. But the truth is, guys, this is Hollywood. This is not the History Channel, which, the History Channel sucks anyway. But this is not a documentary. This is not this thick of a book about Dunkirk. This is just a movie. Everybody who worked on it got paid. Chris Nolan got paid. Give me a break. Got paid. And and a lot of people are saying like, oh, this is, respect. You have to respect, and I think that's true. We absolutely do. And I think that's where he's coming from. But the truth is, this is a Hollywood movie. And I was expecting more as an audience member. Like, if I want to know about Dunkirk, I'm going to buy a book. I'm going to watch a documentary. I'm going to do a number of other things before I watch a Chris Nolan movie about Dunkirk. And not to say he didn't do his research. I'm sure that he did.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have fun watching the movie at all. And isn't that why we all go to the cinema?
You go to a cinema to have an experience, and we had one. Now, is it the one that he wanted us to have? I'm not sure.
I wanted to die the entire time. I was like, this is miserable. Every scene was just, my heart was like...
But that's what it must have been like to be there. And again, I get
so
that.
It should have been like a virtual reality thing as opposed to like...
Which actually wouldn't be a bad idea.
That would be great.
I'd be into that.
Yeah.
But for me, it still just goes back to like him. I understand him. Like, this is a serious movie for him that he really, really wanted to make. And I get that.
Absolutely.
But... I have to agree with you in the sense that he's making a movie, not a documentary.
Yeah.
And the way you get invested in movies is by characters.
And I would have loved to know more about Dunkirk.
But not only about Dunkirk. What are these guys doing? Like, I understand they're trying to get home, but all the characters involved were just kind of thrown into it.
Yeah.
And we never get a good sense of anybody. And for me, it's like, well, then why do I care? I cared more about, like, all right, how is this all going to unfold? All the individual players?
It was somewhere in between art and, like, Hollywood. Right?
Yes,
it was
I agree.
Somewhere in between, and it didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, it was going to be this high art film where there's all these silent moments, and you're sort of sitting with the characters, and but also, it's playing in the cinema, and it's Chris Nolan, and they're like playing with you with the suspense, with the sound design, with the editing, which was incredible, like all this stuff, and I couldn't quite figure. I wanted it to be one thing or the other. And you talked a little bit earlier about the lack of dialogue and about how you want to see. You want to hear some dialogue, but what also didn't work for me was you see Chris Hardy. He's wearing this mask the whole time.
Oh, Tom Hardy, man.
Tom Hardy. Yeah. You actually can't figure out what his facial expressions are. Does he have a wife? Does he have kids at home? Like, what is going on? And look, yeah, sure, he's this cookie cutter,
fighter
pilot.
He comes across that way because we don't know anything else about him.
Sure, and not even that, but like we can't even see his face for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like I could connect, and I just feel like we keep hitting the same point home where we're having trouble connecting with the people who are on screen for us.
And that was a problem for me. And for me, the way I view movies, if I don't care about anything that's going, the movie failed me. I'm only speaking for me. The movie failed me because I get invested in characters. That's how I judge a good movie versus a bad movie. If the characters work, the story worked, I can forgive everything else. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that you guys understand where I'm coming from with my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it is, my opinion. You guys have your own, and trust me, I'm sure we're going to hear in the comments below that you guys either agree with us or strongly disagree, which is totally fine because film is subjective. Maybe this style of movie that Chris made works for you. It didn't work for me. I'm speaking for me.
Yeah.
So, and the funny thing is about the way the movie ended is like when they're kind of celebrating that they were able to get everybody home, and then when Tom Hardy's plane kind of lands and he gets captured, it's a sense of like this is how war really is. He's the hero, but they'll never know his name, just like how the papers didn't know his name, and the history books probably would never know what he did. But George, who was just a kid who jumped on a boat, to be very like the movie, he just a kid that jumped on a boat, that his intentions were good, but really didn't do anything, and he's the hero. So it goes to show you that war, sometimes you're the hero and you don't get the credit, and sometimes you're someone who's just at the right place at the right time and you get all the credit. And war it's those kind of things happen, and it's unfortunate because the heroes should always be remembered and celebrated. And if you just happen to be there, you shouldn't be. History shouldn't remember you.
You're like putting some serious hate on for George right now, and I'm kind of mad because I love George. But I hear what you're saying, and this sort of goes to my point where I wish that the movie could decide whether it was going to give me more information about the actual events that occurred, or if it was just going to be this art film. I don't know. It was like trying to be several things at once. I would have loved it if they would have actually told the story of how they got there, why they got trapped, like what went wrong. And
that's what I thought we were gonna get.
Like it was 2 hours of them just. Oh my god! It was just so miserable. It was like the most miserable 2 hours of my life. Well, and
I can understand why you feel that way. Yeah, I really can.
So, and I would have liked to have seen a war movie that gave me some information about what actually happened. But we didn't get
that. I understand. But Chris, like he even said, this isn't a war film, and I totally agree with him. It's not.
I was really glad that it was PG-13. I didn't want to see any gore. It was more psychological, which I really appreciated.
Which kind of is like war.
Like I said, like the scenes themselves, like individual little, scenes that had a little character piece here and there. There's some suspense. Yeah. Those worked great for me. Every scene in itself was spectacular because Chris Nolan's an incredible director.
Yes, no one's disputing that. But if we got a little bit more character development with you pick out the character, any one of them, and spend a little bit more time on them, and I can get a feel of what's going on with them. The movie probably I would feel completely differently about it, because if I could identify with someone and relate to someone and understand what they're going through, I would feel completely different about this movie. And because I didn't, for me, the movie didn't work for me. Yeah, it just didn't.
There were some moments, some glimpses where I was like, "Oh, I kind of get you, dude," and then it fell apart. But
yeah, like the scene where they're all in the boat and they're trying to plug the holes.
Like that's gonna work.
Well, I mean, but hey, you're desperate times, you do desperate things.
Desperate times,
but
desperate measures.
I mean, for me, it's just like, I mean, if that boat sank and they all went down in it, I really didn't get a sense of any of you guys. So I mean, I wouldn't have felt that bad. And maybe that makes me a bad guy. I don't know. But again, the movie didn't spend enough time on them for me to care about any of those. The set pieces were great, but
it's true. And when you talk about screenwriting, it's sort of like they're just floundering for the first, 3/4 of the movie, and then the British come. The civilians bring their boats, and then they kind of fuck up too, and then they kind of bring some people home. Yeah. I don't know. There wasn't this cathartic...
Everybody got home except for the French, which there's like, well, I'm going to stay and wait for that.
French. Well, for me, there wasn't necessarily this cathartic moment because I felt like they hit it home too many times. We're like, we're getting on the boat, we're going to be saved, and the boat goes down. We're getting in the boat, we're going to be saved, and the boat goes down. And it's like, oh, the civilians are here, we're getting on the boat, we're going to be saved. And then they kind of just go on the boats and leave, and then it's like, oh no, the oil, oh no, I don't know.
And again, I think character development would have helped us care about, they're getting home this time. Oh no, the boat sank. Oh no, because such and such really wants to get home, and then they get on the boat again, and then that sinks. It's like after a while, just like, oh well, we just saw that, and because I don't know who these people are, it feels a little bit repetitive. And that's not what you want.
Hey, not to say that all white people look the same, but I gotta tell you, all the white people looked the same to me in this movie, and I could not tell them apart. I mean, I'm talking about the soldiers here. Like, there was the one guy, and the one guy who was trying to take a shit the whole movie, and then the one guy who was the French guy who was burying the British guy, and
I would love to learn more about him.
Yeah, but they all look the same to me, so it was really hard for me to track. I mean, we're saying the same point over and over again here. Like, it was really hard to track a character that, you cared about. Like, do you have a family? And not that it should matter. Of course, everybody has a family. But maybe not.
What are your motivations? Like, I understand, obviously, you're in a shitty situation. It's war. But what are your motivations? Why are you trying to get home? And I don't want
Everybody's trying to survive. And I get it. But,
if any of you guys seen Saving Private Ryan, you know what the motivations are in that movie. That is a war movie. But put the war stuff aside, you understand the motivation of the characters when they're in the battles, when they're actually doing the things they're doing, why they do things, why they don't do things. You understand that. So when the French guy we assume he killed that soldier and he's taking his uniform so he can get out of there. What was his motivation? Why did he do that? Why is he so desperate to get out of there? Put the war stuff aside. What is his motivations? That's why we get invested in characters. And again, if you don't have that, then it's just it's a scene, things happen, then it cuts to another scene, things happen, and so on and so on and so on. And that's what it felt like for me. Maybe, again, that's subjective. Maybe some of you guys felt like that it worked, and I'm happy for you. So if I would still say, even though the film didn't work for me, I know there's going to be people, maybe there's former soldiers or just some people who are Chris Nolan fans, that you're going to go to this movie and you're going to enjoy it, and that's great. And I would still tell people to go, but just go with the right frame of mind that this is not a war film, it's not an action movie. It's a movie that, for me, I kind of agree with what you said. It's on the borderline of being an art film and a studio film, and it's trying to play to both audiences, but it failed, in my mind, to appeal to anyone.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And one of the friends who was in the army mentioned, that's totally unrealistic. They wouldn't have dropped their guns. That's bullshit. And I'm just like, oh my God, there's going to be so many opinions coming out about this film. But I think what we are trying to say is that cinematically, the scenes were very well crafted, technically perfect, basically in every way. I was holding my breath for so many of those scenes. So, the suspense, he succeeded. Chris Nolan succeeded, and his whole team succeeded in building the suspense, the soundtrack, which almost wasn't even music at all. It was more just noise. And God, the movie was loud when the planes came. There were so many, don't get me wrong, there were so many really powerful
and thought out
cinematic moments, but never came to make a whole film that you and I could fully enjoy and that we want to see again. So that, I think that sort of is what it boils down to. Reason being, we don't have a lot of characters that we could relate to. So that's sort of what it boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't repeat ourselves, I guess I would love to hear from everybody else about what you guys think about this. Did you really relate to any of the characters? Do you agree that maybe a lot of the scenes felt a little bit disjointed and didn't quite make a full film? Or maybe you felt that they did? You know, how did you feel about Tom Hardy's character? Like, there were so many characters in this film, and it was... Talk to me about George, you guys. I want to talk about George, because
did his death have an effect on you guys? Because, like I said, for me, it kind of felt a little bit flat.
See,
so.
I felt a little bit sad. But then again, he's dead inside.
Yeah. So before we depart, what would you give the score out of 10?
5.5. 6? Yeah. As a whole movie, let's say 6. 6.
I was gonna go with the number you originally. I was gonna say 5.5. Only because, like I said, visually, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I'm gonna do a little bit. Like, I understand what he was trying to accomplish, and for that plus visually, that's why I'm giving it. I can't give it a lower score than that.
Yeah.
5.5.
Final thoughts? See the film. It's
Yes.
worth seeing. And then buy the book about Dunkirk and get all of your information there.
Or watch a documentary about Dunkirk.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining us for this pop review. We just talked about Dunkirk. My name is Alex.
I'm Sean.
So be sure to like and subscribe, and definitely comment below, because I really want to hear what everybody else has to think, because I love talking about this stuff. So
Only if you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, you don't have an opinion. Just do this.
Get out of here. Just kidding. You're welcome here too. But I'm sad that you watched a spoiler review if you haven't seen the movie. Anyway.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so we'll see you next time here, Pop Culture Universe. Bye.